Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be digging into something I like to call the invisible saboteur. It's this hidden dynamic that silently hijacks our focus, our presence, and our reactions right in the middle of our daily work lives. It literally pulls us out of the present moment before we even realize what's going on. But don't worry, by the end of our time together, you'll have the exact tools to spot it and stop it. Let's get into it.
So to kick things off, let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced a moment where just a simple routine correction or, a standard disagreement suddenly felt like a massive out-of-proportion threat? I mean, we've all been there, right? Your heart starts racing, your chest gets tight, and a totally ordinary interaction at work suddenly feels incredibly loaded or painful. Why in the world does that happen?
Well, to answer that, we've got to look at a pretty brilliant insight from Danielle Body's work on mindful leadership. She points out that, essentially, we stop responding to what is directly in front of us, and instead we react to what has been living within us for a long time. It's kind of like a double exposure in a photograph. We think we're looking at the present moment, but there's this painful image of the past superimposed right over it.
So the real diagnosis for this phenomenon, it's what we call unhealed narratives. These are the deeply rooted stories we tell ourselves regarding our worth, our safety, maybe a fear of failure, rejection, or belonging. And when an ordinary relational cue, like an email tone or a passing comment, touches one of these unresolved wounds, it activates a much deeper emotional script. And boom, as a result, we completely lose our grounded center. We are no longer responding to the present situation.
Part 1. The 3 hijacks. Let's look at exactly how these unhealed narratives interfere with our presence. Now, this internal departure happens incredibly fast. I'm talking lightning fast. Let's literally slow down a mere 4-second interaction so you can see the psychological domino effect. At second 1, you get some routine feedback. Okay, fine. But by second 2, an old wound is touched. At second 3, your nervous system perceives a massive threat and rushes into protection mode. And by second 4, you're having a completely disproportionate reaction to what actually just happened.
In this first hijack, which we'll call triggering disproportionate reactions, a standard workplace reality doesn't just register as a normal conversation, it awakens a deeply painful internalized script. In the actual present reality, it's just a standard disagreement. But in your mind, the deep script that gets activated stirs an intense fear of, say, not being respected. So you aren't actually arguing with your colleague anymore, you're arguing with your own past. And that rapid shift brings us to the second hijack. This is where our nervous system yanks us away from conscious presence and forces us into states of urgency, emotional fragmentation, or outdated protective habits, really just to survive. Suddenly, you're doing constant perception management, or you fall into a habit of overfunctioning. Maybe it's people-pleasing, self-silencing, or fleeing straight into defensiveness and control. Basically, these unexamined narratives start silently governing your behavior.
Finally, the third hijack completely clouds our discernment. We stop listening with present clarity to actually understand the situation, and instead, we are pulled into a distorted perception. Because these unexamined narratives quietly shape how we interpret things, we begin to listen entirely through defensiveness, perceiving threats through the lens of old wounds, and preparing a rebuttal before a colleague has even finished speaking.
Part 2. The return. Let's talk about reclaiming your grounded center.
Okay, so the absolutely crucial point to remember here is that losing our center is just a human experience. It happens to all of us, but our true power lies in recognizing the shift before fragmentation becomes our default posture. The goal is definitely not to pretend you're a robot who never gets triggered. No way. The goal is simply to notice it faster and practice the return.
So how do we actually do this? Well, we can rely on a practical rhythm of return to interrupt those outdated protective habits. Step 1. Notice the internal shift. Maybe your jaw clenches or your breathing gets really shallow. Step 2. Name the state honestly. Just admit to yourself, okay, I'm activated right now. Step 3. Take a literal pause to ground your nervous system. And finally, Step 4. Respond with intentional choice, rather than just firing off a knee-jerk reaction.
When you practice this return, you completely change how you show up. You stop reacting to the past and being silently governed by unexamined narratives. Instead, you start responding to the present. You're suddenly meeting those actual workplace pressures, conflicts, and relationships with genuine maturity and absolute clarity. It is honestly a game changer.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought to spark your curiosity and hopefully keep you grounded. The next time an ordinary interaction feels incredibly painful or loaded,
Ask yourself this: am I responding to this exact moment or to a story that has been living within me for a long time? Keep that question in your back pocket, use it to reclaim your presence, and watch what happens. Thanks so much for learning with me today.